Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
So choose the correct option. What is the meaning of the phrase confound it? As we have discussed, to be confused about something, to be perplexed about something. Now this is an analogy question. If vaccine protects us, then what happens? Then oil lubricates us. The effect of vaccine is protection. The effect of oil is lubrication. So the answer is C part. Pasteur's discovery that the rabies microbe lives in the nervous system was inductive, deductive, both or neither. Now what do we mean by inductive? It means something which is based on the facts. Deductive, something which is based on the knowledge. But here it is both. He collected facts as well as he used his own knowledge to come up with this vaccine. Why did Pasteur realize the crazed dog saliva released the crazed dog saliva into a sterile test tube? So sterile, as I told you, is something which is germ free. So what was the reason that he had released the saliva into the test tube which was sterile? Because he did not want the rabies microbes with the other germs. So he just wanted the tube to have only and only the germs causing rabies. How did Pasteur weaken the rabies microbe? So what did Pasteur do to weaken the microbe of rabies? We have just read he let that medulla, that infected medulla, to sit in the sterile solution for a lot of days, and this is what caused the medulla and the infection to get weak. Okay. Read the lines and answer the questions that follow. The first one, Pasteur had never been able to forget the horror of that moment. What are we talking about here? So what horror had Pasteur described in this sentence? It was the horror of seeing a man whose skin, whose wound was burnt using a hot iron in order to protect that man from dying. Why had the person suffering the horror done so willingly? Why was that person suffering so happily and willingly? Because as we have read, that person was obviously going through a lot of pain at that time, but but that patient obviously did not wish to die a painful death. And that is why the person considered being burnt easier as compared to dying a painful death by being bitten by a dog of rabies. What did witnessing this moment make Pasteur resolve in the future? Resolve means decide. So what did Pasteur decide after having seen this incident? It was at this point of time when Pasteur decided that he was going to find a cure of it, and he did that. The sooner it gets there, the sooner it has an effect. What do it and there refer to? What will get there? It is the rabies germ, and there refers to the medulla or the brain of the experimental animal. How did Pasteur and Roux help it get there sooner, and what did Pasteur and Roux do so that rabies germ could reach the brain soon? They injected the piece of infected medulla straight away into the brain of the experimental. Why is it sooner the more effective? Why was it more effective if they could get how soon could the rabies germ reach the brain? Because it was in that duration. They wanted to know the exact time period when it took the rabies germ to affect your brain, so that they could find a medicine, they could find a vaccine that should cure a person within that evacuation. Why were Pasteur's assistants shocked to see him sucking saliva of a mad dog into a tube? So obviously that was a very shocking moment. And why were they so surprised? Because if Pasteur would have sucked it harder, the saliva might have entered his mouth and he also could have got rabies because of that. Alright, why was Pasteur studying samples of saliva from rabies animals? So why was he studying? We all have just read it in the chapter. So he was studying the virus, he was studying the samples of the animals having rabies because he wanted to prepare a vaccine against it. He wanted to prepare an antidote against it, and that is why he was studying as many, samples and viruses as he could. How did Pasteur make the vaccine against rabies? Now this is a long question in which you are going to write about everything that Pasteur did, as I have discussed with you in the summary of this chapter as well. We all know that he was a very determined microbiologist. It was only because of his determination, it was because of his courage that he was able to finally get a vaccine for rabies. How did it start? It started with Pasteur collecting the saliva of the mad bulldog in a tube, transferring it to another sterile test tube, testing it. When he tested, as I told you, there were a few animals who got rabies, there were a few who didn't. Then he tried it with the blood, he injected the blood, but it had no effect altogether. The last thing that he did was when he used his own brain and he decided and he thought about the symptoms of rabies. It was then when he reached the conclusion that rabies straight away affect your brain. So he collected the sample of the brain. He directly injected it into the experimental animal and he realized that this way the time that it took was shorter as compared to the time when that infected medulla, part of that medulla was injected through the body. Then what did he do in order to find out the time period for how long the rabies germ took to fall into effect? So he injected a 1-day-old, 2-day-old, 3 days old infected medulla in the other animal, and he saw that gradually the effect of it worsened, and by the 14th day the rabies germ was totally harmless. So this is how he was able to find a vaccine, a cure for rabies, something that we all are grateful and thankful to him for. So with this, my dear students, we come to an end of this chapter. So we have explained to you the entire chapter, every sentence, every line, every word has been explained to you well. The back exercises have been discussed with you. So I hope that the chapter is very much clear, and I will see you all now in my next lecture. Thank you.